Hey guys, it's BenefitsOfaG from GE Tracker here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how to manage risk. And this video is going to be a response to one of our viewers by the name of Vocalite, who is basically asking how he might get out of his comfort zone and start flipping higher valued items for larger amounts of profits. Now first off, I want to apologize to Vocalite for taking so long to make a response video to this. I had videos lined up that I wanted to make up until this point to help get you guys, well, more of the beginners, kind of like a foundation for you guys to learn off of before I started moving on to more advanced topics. I kind of made a video on candlestick charts, which is a little bit like an intermediate kind of topic, but in this video, I'm going to be talking about basically how to alleviate those concerns and manage risk so you guys can get out of that box. So I'm going to have three main talking points in this video. First off, we have diversifying investments, making money work for you, and understanding how to read the graphs. So first off, we have diversifying investments. The first thing you want to pay attention to when you're trying to flip any type of item, you don't want to invest all of your cash into that item. Unless you're an experienced merchant, in which you can put all your money in it. But as for beginners though, if you're brand new to flipping, then I suggest trying to cast a wide net and figure out which items are doing the best at that current point in time. So if you invest in one item and it's not doing so well and all of a sudden it starts to tank on you, you still have other items that you can bank on in hopes to make a decent profit, in which it'll alleviate some of those losses, which will kind of keep you in the profit zone. The second point I want to make is making your money work for you. So what I mean by that is not standing at the Grand Exchange and just waiting for your items to flip. I often see this where users will come into the Discord chat and say, "Hey, my items aren't instantly buying or selling. The table information is wrong." Which the first thing they did wrong there was relying solely on the table information and not reviewing the graphs. Always review the graphs, because prices change all the time, and those graphs are meant to help you figure out how that item is behaving in the market overall. So the second thing would be that you don't want to be sitting at the Grand Exchange waiting for these items to flip. Do other activities in game. So if you like to do Slayer, then go ahead and do Slayer. If you're a skiller, then do skills that'll make you money. The main driving point is to enjoy the game, and to enjoy the game in a way that maybe if you want to make money elsewhere. And then don't just let your money sit in the bank and just kind of like dust away. Make that money work for you and invest in different items. And then maybe an hour or two, or maybe a couple of days later, your flip's complete and you've made an additional profit on top of everything else you've been doing in game. So if you like to runecraft and you make a good amount of money doing that, then you can obviously kind of like allocate some of the money into flipping, make some investments there, but then go right back to runecrafting or whatever else you want to do in game. So you can make money in two types of venues. Don't put all of your effort into just flipping, unless you have like a billion GP to flip with and all you want to do is flip. But at that point, you're not really a beginner anymore, and this video isn't really for you. And then the last step is to understand how to read the graphs. From time to time, I see users come into the Discord chat and they're still struggling on how to actually read the graphs. And some aren't even looking at the graphs, period. I'm not going to go over it per se in this video on how to read graphs. I've already done quite a few videos on that. And all the other videos that I've done previously. I've even done a live stream recently, in which you can check that out as well, where I go over different items, reviewing the graphs themselves, and then reviewing my thought process on what I'm actually looking for in those graphs. So the first topic I brought up was diversifying your investments. And if you were there for my live stream, then you're going to notice that some of these items here were some of the items that I plan on investing in. And you might notice that as well, that some of the items aren't listed here that I had planned on investing. Not all of them bought and not all of them have sold yet. So this isn't a complete picture of everything that has happened yet. But as you can tell, in that one stream, I've bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different items so far. So I diversified my investments. I cast out a wide net, and some items didn't do so well. I made 58K, around 24K, 32K, but whereas other items did a little bit better. I made around 147K on this one, in which I bought 2 of these. So it's around 300K that I'm planning to make on Holy Wraps, and as well as Dragon Scale Dust. I made almost 500K, and then an additional like 57K here. But then as you can tell earlier in the last month, I've also done well with other types of flips. So as you can tell, if you ever visited my merchanting log here, these are all the flips that I do on the GE Tracker account. So I try not to flip the same items, and everything is always different. Some items are quite low, whereas other items are quite high. These items here that you guys are seeing, these were items I was trying to flip in quick succession, trying to flip them as quickly as possible, in which you can tell that the margins were really low. So that's another thing to pay attention to. If you're going to be an investor or a merchant, the time frame in which you try to flip the items are going to also determine how much of a margin you can get on different items. So if you try flipping items very quick, in quick succession, you're not going to do so well, and you're just going to get some items in here that have a low profit. Whereas if you wait on an item for maybe a couple of hours, you might get $500,000 on just one flip, and boost your sales a lot better if you're a little bit more patient. So when it comes to flipping, being patient is definitely the end game for this, and certainly diversify your investments. So if one investment doesn't do so well, you have other ones to bank on, and hopefully you make absolute bank on it. So instead of talking about how to make your money work for you, I want to talk about more on how you should allocate your actual money in game. So you may not want to invest all of your money in the Grand Exchange and flip all of your cash, whereas you have nothing left for supplies and gear. And this is going to vary to person based on your goals. So basically, you want to set a specific percentage for your investments. And when you set a specific percentage for your investments, you never want to touch that money for anything else. So say you invest, say you made 10 million in one day, and you want to take out 25% of that and invest it solely for flipping. Once you take out that 25%, you never want to touch it again for anything else except for flipping. So if you make another 10 million the next day and your set percentage for investments is still 25%, and you add an additional 25% cash into your flipping, then that cash stack that you have, you don't want to allocate it for anything else. It's going to be solely for flipping, and you don't want to move it for anything else such as gear, supplies, bonds, whatever. You want to set those goals specific to your skill set, whatever your account build is, and whatever your goal is. These are just examples that I have up here for you guys on screen. And again, it varies from person to person. So one person might have 25% of money made in a day for flipping, and then 75% of that money for gear and supplies. So let's say you want to set up a goal for yourself. And maybe one of your goals was to get max melee gear. And this is a little bit subjective. You may have a different interpretation of what max melee gear would be. Maybe you wanted a Saradomin God Sword in addition to having an Abyssal Bludgeon, but this is just an example. So in this scenario, this user is going to be training through Slayer to make their money, and this is going to be their ideal setup for training that skill. So their idea of max melee would be a Bandos Chestplate, Bandos Tassets, Amulet of Torture, Abyssal Bludgeon, and Primordial Boots, which comes to a total of 115.5 mil. Now, the problem with new users or just players who don't like to flip at all, or maybe who like to flip but also want to get the best gear possible, is that they allocate all of their money to a new item or gear that they have their eyes set on almost immediately at the point in which they can afford it. The main concern with that is once you buy that item and you plan on using it, now you're starting off with 0 GP to flip with. You now have nothing to invest your money in at the Grand Exchange while you're doing other activities in game. So now you're just focusing on one avenue for money as opposed to creating two avenues of money, or of sources of money, in which case you can be making money off of Slayer and making money through the Grand Exchange, which is the most ideal situation. So instead of trying to allocate 25% of such investment, let's just round off this total to, let's say, 100 million, just to make it easy. So if this total was in fact 100 million, let's say throughout that entire time, while you were making money, you wanted to allocate 50% of your profit on any given day solely for flipping. So by the time you reach 100 million, you're going to have 100 million in the Grand Exchange to flip with. And it's kind of common knowledge, when you have a larger amount of cash to work with, the more money you're going to be able to make in the long run with that cash by flipping. So now by that point, if you kept to your goal by allocating money to the Grand Exchange and not taking that money out and investing it on gear or supplies or whatever, you've now created a solid foundation to become a wealthy merchant and a wealthy player in game. You've set up two avenues for you to make money, in which case you're going to be making a significant amount of money through the Grand Exchange if you're practicing all the merchanting skills properly, reading graphs, avoiding bubbles, etc., and also making money through the game in whichever way you like to play it. So the point is, if you were to set a goal for yourself, like say you wanted to get a twisted bow, and your goal was to get to allocate 50% of all your profit ever made to flipping, by the time you can afford a twisted bow, then theoretically or hypothetically, you'll also have $1 billion worth in the Grand Exchange flipping. So then once you do buy the twisted bow, you still have money, which makes you a wealthy person, in which case you can still invest and make money instead of solely relying on the twisted bow to make money elsewhere in game and losing that second avenue. And then the last key point was understanding how to read the graphs. Now, I'm not going to go too much in depth in this video on how to view graphs. I've already done quite a bit of videos on that, in which you can check out on our channel if you want to learn more about that. But I'm going to go over two examples in this video. So for this first item, we're looking at the yearly time frame to look at the long haul behavior of this item. And we can tell with this item right now, it's hitting a historic high point. And we can see right here that it's hit its peak, which is basically like a bubble. When you see an item kind of like hitting a historic high, so at this point, this would be a historic high. And even at this point, you can tell that, this item is going to hit a bubble soon, or it's starting to inflate like a bubble, and it's going to pop fairly soon. But it doesn't indicate when it's going to pop or when it's going to decline in the future. It's just kind of something to be aware of. So it kind of took some time for this item to kind of like dip in price in the future, but it's still quite high compared to what it was in the past. So that's one item to pay attention to. If an item is hitting its historic high, then it's quite possible that the item's going to decrease in the future, which is basically like a bubble. And then the second item we have is this item here, also on the yearly time frame, to give ourselves the yearly overview of how this item has behaved. and we can tell that it's hit these kind of humps every now and then. It's hit historic lows, historic highs, and it's gone back up, down again like a roller coaster. And we can see more recently that it's kind of mirroring what it's behaved like again in the past. So as opposed to this item here, didn't really have that many humps for us to go off of. It had its humps in the past, like this here and there, but this is like a new high for this item. So when it starts to hit this kind of like steep increase, that's kind of like an abnormality. There's really not much to go off of in terms of historically. Maybe something was changed in game, like an update that made this item more valuable, which is also something to pay attention to. So you might want to look at these labels here, and if you click on them, it's going to take you to that page to give you more information on that. So that's one thing to pay attention to. But with this item, there isn't any update in game that made this more valuable. So as just by looking at this on the yearly time frame, I can tell that his historic low point here, in which case this is the point in time that I would have invested in this item in anticipation that this item is going to increase in price again sometime in the future. And that's obviously not how you say a definite guarantee, but it's definitely also possible given its behavior in the past. And now more recently, we can see that it's hitting its historic high point again, and now this is like another bubble, in which case I can expect this item to crash again in the future. So this would be an item that I would want to avoid. So in summary, experiment with the type of items that you're flipping. Don't stick to one type of item. So if you're used to flipping high volume items, try and flip one item that's from like the suggested items tool, or maybe highest margins. Try and kind of like diversify your investments and not stick to one type. Take your time. It's not a race to have the most amount of cash you possibly can. This is all about you and your own personal growth. Make sure to study the graphs so you know what you're actually looking at. Be sure to divide up your cash. So if you have a long-term goal of setting yourself to get the max melee gear, make sure you allocate some money specifically for flipping, so when you do get your melee gear, you still have money set aside for a different avenue for you to make money. And then the main point is to be patient. You may not make as much money as you want to on day one, but there are plenty of people who have success stories and are doing very well for themselves. Don't compare yourself to them. Compare yourself to your own growth, your own historical past, and trying to prove upon your own mistakes and learn from them. So that's going to be the end of the video, guys. If you guys like this video, be sure to leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to show your support. Leave a comment down below on any type of videos you guys want to see in the future. Good luck merching, guys, and until next time.